From its opening moment, where we see Steve Rogers running laps around soon-to-be ally Sam Wilson with calls of "on your left," through the initial takeovers, car chases, cloak and dagger games, right up until the final unveiling and defeat of the villains, Captain America the Winter Soldier demands the undivided focus of its audience and doesn't let go through a series of breathtaking action sequences, a detailed and challenging modern-day espionage-themed plot, superb and warm character developments, as well as a heap of Easter eggs designed to both further expand the Marvel Cinematic Universe and make comic book fans salivate. Inarguably what is the strongest addition yet to this franchise, with the possible exception of last summer's blockbuster The Avengers, Captain America not only continues his quest to try and find his place in this modern world, but is forced to make new allies when the realization hits that the only things he thought he knew simply aren't. So what do you do in a hopeless situation when you really have no one to depend on? Like he has done his whole life, Steve adapts. So as we touch base with our hero, straight away he reminds us that despite what happens in New York, he is still very much a man out of time, trying to come to terms with what he's missed. He has no family, no close friends, and a big list of books, music, and movies to catch up on, as well as things to try in his downtime. It's at this point that Natasha pulls up and accompanies Cap to the only thing in his life that makes sense: a mission. Being surrounded by soldiers and threats, as sad as it is, gives Captain America meaning. A point very cleverly articulated by Black Widow, who takes the opportunity to discuss dating options with Steve, both en route and during the takeover. I loved it. And for the first time this entire franchise, we begin to see some serious development of the side characters that aren't love interests, that have been prominent throughout the series from day one. Scarlett Johansson, an actor I didn't really respect, playing Black Widow, a comic book character I can't stand, whose role in the Marvel Cinematic Universe to this point has been that of the overcompensating female badass dynamo that relies on explosive action to mix with the big boys. And naturally, to keep things interesting, we have to have a superhero romance. Hint hint, Hawkeye. Yet the producers managed to give her a degree of depth and humanity that really allowed the audience to connect with her on an emotional level and demonstrate that she's not just a fluff character. And Scarlett herself responds with the performance of her lifetime, as her portrayal of Natasha Romanoff is that of a fiercely loyal, intelligent, compassionate agent who really could be the best friend an out-of-time Rogers could have. And then Captain America fans finally get to see what we've waited for through 2 movies already: Cap kicking ass. While some may say it was overblown or unrealistic, so what? The sequence of Captain America silently tearing through the boat, nailing people with his shield, bashing through them, throwing the shield and catching the ricochet, absolutely brilliant. It finally portrays him as the badass super soldier that he's meant to be in this universe. And the showdown with Batroc Zalipa, also very cool. 1, because it's a kick-ass fight between 2 highly skilled combatants. 2, Batroc's line about Cap being more than just a shield just draws a little bit of ego out of Steve, which in itself is pretty cool, as it further emphasizes that this guy is human after all, and continues making him relatable. A theme continued by the ongoing suggestions from Widow throughout the sequence that he should start dating. And finally, how cool is the Marvel Cinematic Universe when they're in a position to start introducing characters like Batroc to the silver screen? More recently in the comics, they've tried to give Batroc a more serious tone, and despite still looking kind of ridiculous, the Batroc in this film, like the comics, is a complete dangerous badass and a worthy opponent for Cap. Geez, I hope we see him again. Once this mission is all wrapped up, we begin to get a bit of a sense of what this story really is about. Cap is furious with Fury for sending Natasha off on a side mission that Steve didn't know about, arguing that he can't be an effective leader if members of his team have their own secret agendas. Fury counters with arguments about compartmentalization and only knowing what you need to so as not to jeopardize the mission, and it illustrates the key theme of this film. How can you be expected to make good decisions when you can't see all the moving pieces? And exactly why and for what is Captain America fighting? Fury then lets Steve in on some of his secrets, in this case, Project Insight, but the point remains the same. Captain America saved the world, but the world has changed. We're now talking about fighting wars by eliminating/murdering threats before they can become threatening. It's not like it was in World War II. We turn our eyes away from the questionable things we allow our governments to do in the name of our safety. Maybe this is something that we should care just a little bit more about. This is followed up with a nice scene where Steve goes to visit a now aged and dementing Peggy Carter, further highlighting how alone and out of place Cap really is. We then go to our next breathtaking action sequence in which Nick Fury, after covertly contacting his main confidant in Maria Hill to alert her to his suspicion that something is amiss, becomes involved in an epic car chase. Epic for a few reasons. 1. Visually, it was spectacular. 2. It was fantastic that we finally got to see Nick Fury in action. He's been in nearly all of the Marvel films, but to this point, done very little, and Sam Jackson is a badass, and I love seeing it. 3. This sequence drew focus so strongly, was so captivating, that I remember thinking in the cinema that I had absolutely no idea how this would play out. I'd completely forgotten that this film was about the Winter Soldier. And 4, the entrance of the Winter Soldier himself. Just awesome. It was hyped, it was ominous, suspenseful, and foreboding. Shortly thereafter, Fury gets gunned down by our chief antagonist in Steve's apartment after both alerting Cap of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s corruption and pointing out that his apartment is under surveillance. Another one of Nick's little secrets. So Fury seemingly dies after handing Cap a flash drive containing what little evidence of corruption there is, with the key message being to trust no one. And now Steve doesn't even have the organization anymore. The thing that the producers did really well with Nick's death was that despite no true Marvel fan really believing Fury was dead, nor were they surprised by the cloak and dagger stuff, I think at one point or another we were all guilty of thinking, geez, did they really do it? Kudos for not dragging it out too much though. So after stashing the flash drive and meeting with Alexander Pierce, played by Robert Redford, Cap gets branded a fugitive to S.H.I.E.L.D. once the impression is formed that he's withholding information. Though it's contrary to the comics where Pierce remains one of the good guys, this film reveals its hand by identifying Alexander as the puppet master. Even though it's indirect and unofficial at this point, realistically, who else is going to be the mastermind? Fury had his suspicions about Project Infinity and was taken out, and now the only other man that has the means to figure out what the grand play was is forced on the run. The only question that remains is Alexander Pierce who we really think he is? Fortunately, the answer to that is yes, and no, thankfully he's not the Red Skull, as rumour had it. Robert Redford is pretty fantastic in this role. What really makes this character work is that the overall plan is not without merit. Eliminate your threats before they can ever hurt you. Sacrifice some lives to save thousands, maybe even millions. Nick Fury believed in it. And even though we find out that Alexander is an agent of Hydra, fun little moments like him bartering with Fury to have Iron Man appear at his niece's birthday party, not just a flyby who's got to mingle, really humanizes this character. Cap then has to fight his way out of the Triskelion with the agents of Strike attempting to ambush him in what is a very memorable fight in the elevator. Anybody else get a sense that this beatdown is reminiscent of Cap's escape from the helicarrier during the Marvel Civil War? Despite how far-fetched the idea that the Marvel Cinematic Universe would round out the third Avengers movie with a tie into the Marvel Civil War is, Iron Man a villain. Yeah, right. For some reason, this idea really resonated with me. I guess this is because we know that Captain America dies at the end of the Marvel Civil War, and Chris Evans is only contracted for 6 Marvel movies and Sebastian Stan 9, leading to speculations that Stan will pick up the mantle at some point. You also have hints of Steve wanting to move away from being a government soldier, which is essentially what started this whole debacle in the first place. From here, Cap and Widow unite after Natasha finds the stashed flash drive in the vending machine, guys. Seriously, not the finest moment, and waits for Cap to come retrieve it. I guess it's as good a reason as any for them to be able to trust each other. Fury trusted Cap so Natasha can, and Widow could have taken it and run, but didn't. Their travels take them from the mall and Apple store, which was fun, and home to their rather controversial kiss, that really was a bit of a beat-up, all the way to Camp Lee in Virginia. True Marvelites will know that this was Bucky's home in the comics, whereas it's taken on the role of Steve's old army base. Is this new? I must have missed that in the first Avenger. And here we get one of the sweetest reveals of all. Back comes Arnim Zola in the form of which we all know him. And the big reveal? That since its inception, Hydra has operated within S.H.I.E.L.D. with the aim of creating enough chaos so that something like Project Insight can be initiated and used to wipe out their enemies under the guise that freedom needs to be exchanged for security. What was not to love? The plan is cool. We get one of the chief Cap villains from the first Avenger and his own comic book in his true form. Hydra is back, and Cap becomes even more despondent as his sacrifices have seemingly been for naught. Maybe the old supervillain reveal the master plan was a bit much, but you know, at least they bombed the bunker with the aim of killing them all, so it wasn't too bad. I do wish though that the Winter Soldier reveal had occurred here at Camp Leah, in the darkness, more like the comic, but still, it was done pretty well. Enter Anthony Mackie as the Falcon. Where else were they going to turn? Post-movie reports suggest that in Avengers 2, we'll discover why Hawkeye and the Hulk are otherwise engaged, hence Sam is the only other person that Cap knows. The producers resist the temptation of trying to make Sam Wilson an equal badass hero in his own right. Despite a nice costume, quite a few excellent flight sequences where he gets to showcase what he can do, and some gun-toting, Sam Wilson can't really fight, and the Winter Soldier puts him out of the contest pretty easily when it matters. And that right there is the beauty of the decision to add Falcon to the supporting cast. Sam is brought in to be Cap's main ally, his confidant. Wilson fulfills the same role here that the character does in the comics, that of a genuine, loyal man that can not only be relied upon, but is also a good friend to Steve Rogers. And so, the supporting cast for Cap continues to grow, and he takes steps forward in this new world. It's credit all around here. Mackie is confident, cool without overdoing it, and the producers successfully maneuver around the potential pitfalls of this challenging character. No ridiculous costume, no talking to birds, no overcompensating. I thought it was a huge risk, but clearly to the producers, the result was never in doubt. The trio then get to Jasper Sitwell, the long-time Hydra mole over several films, plus the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. series. Just love how these little details are all lining up, and they discover the rest of the plan. That Project Insight will be utilised to kill anyone Hydra identifies as a threat. This, of course, follows the movie's next big action sequence, the fight on the highway, where we finally learn what we all already knew. Bucky is the Winter Soldier. Who the hell is Bucky? Straight out of the comic books. The fight sequence is again breathtaking, and Stan comes across as a formidable, almost cyborg-like killing machine. Sebastian Stan nailed the portrayal of the Winter Soldier to a T. He is a cold, calculating, emotionless killer concerned only with the mission. Criticisms that Stan was too blunted in his presentation of the character are really not well thought out. He was meant to be. In my opinion, criticism here really should be directed at the title of the film. Calling it the Winter Soldier heavily implies that the focus will be on the Bucky story. It's not. That story only just gets set up, and the emotional impact of this is primed to be explored in the next installment, possibly with a final reunion/reconciliation occurring shortly before Steve Rogers' demise. bold if they go there. Nonetheless, for now, Stan's performance was exactly what it needed to be. We can't be too critical of the red herring in the title though. Captain America: The Destruction of S.H.I.E.L.D. kind of reveals a major plot line. Moving on, our trio are captured by the bad guys only to be sprung by Maria Hill, who reveals what we all suspected. Fury is alive and he has the plan. Meanwhile, the writers then take the opportunity to throw in my favourite Easter egg yet. The Winter Soldier is spooked by his encounter with Cap, and Hydra are having difficulty containing him. References are made regarding putting him into stasis a la the comics, and then Ed Brubaker himself, aka the man who wrote this amazing storyline, is in the background. Very cool. They then do something a little more original. Pierce talks to Bucky like he's a soldier doing the right thing. I don't remember this from the Brubaker run. In that, the Winter Soldier was a mindless machine just following orders. This version, he thinks he's doing the right thing. Underneath it all, the hero is still there. I really like this turn. We then get to our final mission. Fury and Natasha take Pierce down and expose Hydra's infiltration to the world. The good agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. attempt to do their bit, led by the surprisingly underused Agent 13. Let's see what's to come there. And then between our heroes, they manage to disable 2 of the 3 helicarriers of Project Insight, only losing Falcon along the way, whose wing pack is destroyed by Bucky. This results in a Sam Wilson vs Brock Rumlow showdown that sees Brock get buried under the rubble and rushed off to hospital as a disfigured mess. The type of scenario that could potentially result in Brock having to wear a skeleton-type mask and call himself Crossbones in the future. A nice performance by Frank Grillo here. Strong and tough, underlyingly nasty, set up for the future. Full marks. Then finally, the confrontation that we've all been waiting for occurs. Cap in full uniform and the Winter Soldier square off 1-to-1 with Rogers attempting to complete the mission, not hurt Bucky, and somehow get through to his friend. Ultimately, Cap decides not to fight Bucky and gets beaten to a bloody pulp and shot multiple times for his trouble before both bringing down the helicarrier and saving Bucky from the debris. Steve then loses consciousness and is thrown out of the crashing helicarrier down into the river below, only to be dragged out by the Winter Soldier, who then vanishes. Again, seemingly like the comic book. We now have a sense that the Winter Soldier is at least beginning to remember his past, a fact further emphasised by the post-credits scene that see Bucky reading up about himself at the Smithsonian Museum. You just have to love the respect to the source material. This is like literally watching a comic book on the silver screen. The aftermath? S.H.I.E.L.D's gone, Fury is underground, Widow needs a new identity, and Falcon stands beside Cap as the two embark on a journey to find Bucky. Finally, our big reveal, in a scene that kind of mimicked Loki's initial presence on Earth, post-scene Thor, is that Baron von Strucker is in town and that he has the Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver. Nice to introduce a few more heavy-hitting, complex, and above all else, unique characters for the next Avengers. This could go in multiple directions. Strucker is a more surprising choice. Very old school, but still, he is Hydra. If it hasn't been emphasized enough in my previous videos, all glory to Chris Evans, who is arguably the best performed actor in the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe. As has previously been discussed, with no blatant superpowers or outrageous character quirks, Captain America did and continues to present the greatest risk for the Avengers in terms of both realism and appeal. The only way to make fans like him is to make him a likable character, and this film, like its predecessor, has achieved this in spades. Chris Evans as Captain America is brave, smart, noble, compassionate, kind of funny, a bit of a sweetheart, out of his depth, and a badass with a hint of ego. What's not to love? All in all, I give this movie a 9 out of 10. probably the single best installment of the Marvel Cinematic Universe minus the Avengers, but still there's no shame in that. The only thing that stops it from being perfect is that whilst it repeatedly hit the high notes, it probably never stays at the highest level for long enough to give it that real wow factor. And whilst the movie had half a dozen excellent performances by various members of the ensemble, there probably was no one particular standout that got even close to reaching the Heath Ledger's Joker, or to a much lesser extent, Tom Hiddleston's Loki. It just lacked that knockout punch. But still, don't let that detract too much from what is otherwise a brilliant installment to the franchise. Captain America: The Winter Soldier is a film that not only enriches the Marvel Cinematic Universe and proves to be a bit of a game changer, but develops and brings its own lead story forward. And the foundations are now set for the third installment that could potentially round out what could be the best three-part installment superhero movie series ever created. As usual, feel free to leave any questions, comments, or found corrections, and join us again in a few days as the Amazing Spider-Man review will be posted. Now, before I go, a little shout out here to my personal inspiration in regards to making videos for the world of geek. If you don't know about it already, check out Channel Bad Guy's Villain Guide. It's fantastic. I only hope one day that my movies will be as good as his. This is Winter Soldier here, signing off.